All right. I am calling to order the regular meeting of the zoning administrator for the city of San Clemente. My name is Cecilia Gallardo Daly, and I'm the zoning administrator. The first item on the agenda is to receive and file the minutes of the zoning administrator meeting of April 7, 2022. So received and filed. The next item on the agenda is oral and written communication. This is a time on the agenda when members of the audience may address the zoning administrator on an item that is not on the agenda, but within the zoning administrator's purview. It doesn't look like we have anybody wishing to speak on non-agenda public items, so we'll move to the next section, and that's public hearings. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker. Following closure of the public hearing, the zoning administrator will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. So the first item that we have on the agenda for public hearings is the minor conditional use permit for Sea Surf Fish, Beer, and Wine, but I understand that item is being withdrawn. The applicant is going to amend their request.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is the condo conversion at 162 Avenida Florencia. And our staff planner, David Carrillo, will give us a brief report on this item.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I'll start off with some background. There's properties at 162 Avenida Florencia. It's in the residential medium zoning district and in the coastal zone overlay district. The lot is a 4,000 square foot interior lot with a duplex building. One unit is currently vacant and the other one is being used by the property owner. The residential medium zone does permit the 2 units on site, so it's currently in compliance with regards to density. So the applicant is requesting to subdivide the airspace of the lot to allow for 2 condominium units, and this will allow for a separate ownership of each unit along with a portion of common areas. So for this type of request, a tentative parcel map application is required, which is what they're requesting today, and that's required for condominium conversions of 4 or less units. Here we have 2. This year, the city is required to restrict condominium conversions to 26 since the vacancy rate is less than 10%. These 2 units will be the first of the year, of the fiscal year 2022, so we're in compliance with that provision. Since the site is within the coastal zone, the property owner will have to submit to the Coastal Commission for review and approval after this process. So as stated in the staff report, staff finds that the project does meet the required findings for a tentative parcel map, and we have not received any public comments on this item. So given the analysis in the report, staff recommends that the zoning administrator determine the project is categorically exempt from California Environmental Quality Act, and that the zoning administrator adopt the attached resolution approving the subject tentative parcel map. And that concludes my presentation. And we do have the architect or engineer and the property owner.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I don't have any follow-up questions. Would the applicant like to say a few words or make any statements or comments at this time?
No
Okay,
statement.
so, no, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, well, I don't have any questions for you. So I will at this time open the public hearing. It doesn't look like we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, so I'll close the public hearing. And I have read through the materials and the application, the findings and the conditions of approval. I believe that the project meets the required findings for approval. This project is limited to subdividing the lot's airspace to allow for separate ownership of 2 condominium units. There are no potential for environmental impacts. Conditions of approval are included requiring CC&Rs to establish maintenance responsibilities over common areas, and the request complies with the municipal code, building health and safety codes, and other applicable regulations and policies. So with that, based on the information in the report and subject to the required findings and conditions of approval, I determined that the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15315, and I approve resolution number ZA22-003, the tentative parcel map 2021-160, TPM 21-212, the Le Comte duplex condominium conversion, subject to the conditions of approval. Thank you. Sorry for the mispronunciation.
That's all right. I get it a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is a minor conditional use permit for Nine Style Ramen Beer and Wine, and we'll have Carla Morales, our staff planner, give us a presentation on that.
Right. Good afternoon. The project is minor conditional use permit 21-070 Nine Style Ramen Beer and Wine, which is a request to allow beer and wine service for on-site consumption indoors at an existing ramen restaurant. The project is located at 2017 South El Camino Real, and it's located within the neighborhood commercial 1.3 zone and the affordable housing overlay. The project site is located within is abutting a residential neighborhood to the northeast and is surrounded by commercial businesses on all other sides. The restaurant occupies a 1,500 square foot tenant space, and it shares an on-site 12-stall parking lot with another tenant, which is a laundromat. The restaurant provides for 32 indoor seats, and there is no outdoor seating allowed per a condition of approval from a previous entitlement, minor architectural permit 04-038, and the intent of this condition was to mitigate any noise impacts due to the proximity to the surrounding residential neighborhood to the northeast. So the proposal is a request from the applicant for approval of a minor conditional use permit to sell beer and wine for on-site consumption indoors in conjunction with the existing restaurant operations. No modifications to the tenant space, seating, or business hours are proposed, and the proposed alcohol service would take place during the regular business hours from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. from Wednesday through Monday. The restaurant will be closed on Tuesdays. The restaurant currently has an approved business license for a restaurant with 32 indoor seats, which is reflected on the submitted floor plan. And since they do not propose any increased seatings, there's no additional parking required. So staff believes that the proposed use meets the required findings in the attached staff report and the resolution. And with that, staff recommends that the zoning administrator determine the project is categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15301, Class 1 existing facilities, and that the zoning administrator adopt Resolution ZA22-004 approving minor conditional use permit 21-070, subject to the conditions of approval.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't have any follow-up questions. The staff report was very clear with the request and any additional requirements. So the applicant isn't here, so they aren't going to be speaking on this item. Okay, I at this time will open the public hearing. Don't see anybody, members of the public, wishing to speak on this item, so I will close the public hearing. I have read through the application materials, the staff report, the conditions of approval, and the proposed findings, as well as the CEQA determination. I can find that the project meets the requirements and findings for a minor conditional use permit. The project maintains the primary use of the site as a restaurant. The beer and wine service at a restaurant indoors is a conditionally permitted use in the neighborhood commercial zone, as Carla stated, and is consistent with the general plan. The project doesn't increase intensity or seating, therefore no additional parking is required, and the sale and consumption of beer and wine is limited to the interior of the building, and the business does not operate after 9 p.m., which is I find compatible with the adjacent uses and nearby residential. So as the zoning administrator, I determined that the project is categorically exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15301, Class 1 existing facilities, and I approve Resolution ZA22-004. minor conditional use permit 21-070 9 style ramen, subject to the conditions of approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public hearings for today. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business. Seeing none, I'll move on to the next item, old business. Seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting of the zoning administrator to be held at 3 p.m. on Thursday, May 19th, 2022 at the Community Development Department, first floor community room, located at 910 Calle Negocio, San Clemente, California. Thank you. Thanks.